We're seeing extraordinary scenes in South America at the moment, with the so-called migrant caravans of several thousands of people who have moved up from Central America, have reached Mexico City and beyond, and say that they're not going to stop until they're across the US border. Robert, what's going on?
Good afternoon, Bruce. Well, what's happened is that we have about 5,000 people who've left Honduras. Originally it was a party of about 1,000 people, and it's gathered this caravan, this group of people who are seeking a better life, have moved progressively through Guatemala into Mexico, with apparently the destination being the United States.
So what's really driving this?
I think it's the conditions of the living conditions in places like Guatemala, Honduras. Many of these people who've joined the caravan are seeking to flee violence and poor economic prospects. Many of them are very poor people indeed, and they are literally on the move in seek of a better life. And with modern communications being what they are, even poor people who have probably less access to communications than others still can find out that there is a better life elsewhere.
It's reminiscent of the North African and Middle Eastern refugee crisis of a couple of years ago. But are these two incidents related in any way?
I think there are certain overlaps between the two crises in both situations. If you take, for example, the Syrian crisis in the Middle East, and you take the crisis that's now developing in Central America in terms of the outflow of refugees, in both cases there are conflicts and, if you like, living conditions which many people find extremely challenging. There's a lot of drug-related gang violence in Central America, Honduras being one of the worst places. And in many respects, people are seeking to escape these appalling living conditions, both in the Syrian civil war and also in Honduras. And also, let's be quite frank, there's another similarity. Much of the world is looking on. And so people are taking their life into their own hands, so to speak, and deciding to move.
US President Donald Trump has banned CNN journalist Jim Acosta from the White House because he criticised the president for calling the caravan an invasion. How significant is that?
I think it's fairly significant. I think the president was incensed by Jim Acosta's challenging of the term invasion. Mr. Acosta pointed out that the so-called invasion was a caravan of very poor people, whereas Mr. Trump described them as largely criminals. He also pointed out it was about 500 miles away or more from the United States at that point, at the time of the press conference in the White House. The other thing here is we have to take into account is that the president has both described CNN as fake news and also an enemy of the people. And I think he was particularly sensitive to the nature of the questions that Mr. Acosta was making, because Mr. Acosta was actually challenging the president's grasp of the situation and by implication his description of the organisation or CNN that he works for. So this is and we know now that he's had his press credentials withdrawn, which has led to CNN suing the White House and some of Mr. Trump and some of his key aides.
The US president has called in 5,000 troops, 5,000 soldiers to guard the border. How do you think this is likely to play out?
Very difficult to predict, clearly, but the Pentagon has indicated that this whole exercise could cost more than $200 million, which could make it domestically unpopular. The Pentagon have also said, somewhat undiplomatically, that they do not consider this to be a major security challenge to the United States. They also said that the caravan still would not reach the United States for another month to 6 weeks. And James Mattis said that his department, the Department of Defense, will not be party to what he called any stunt. So there seems to be a bit of tension between the Pentagon. While they have deployed the troops, many of them had to miss Thanksgiving to be on the US-Mexican border. There seems to be a little bit of tension between Mr. Trump's political emphasis on being resilient. Remember, this was a key campaign pledge of the Trump administration. They were going to be robust in turning back would-be illegal immigrants. And at the same time, the US Department of Defense seems to be somewhat downplaying any potential security threat from these refugees. Remember, the United States is built on immigration and has always in the past played a key role in resettling people. And so there is a bit of a departure from the past going on here under Mr. Trump's leadership.
Well, thank you, Robert. It's
Thank
been
you,
excellent.
Bruce. Thank you.
and thank you for watching. Catch you next time on Global Insight. Hasta luego.